Well, today we're reaching out to those dealing with suicidal thoughts. As overwhelming as life may feel right now, God can and will help you through your struggle. And that's the same message for those who are in pain because a loved one has committed suicide. Kay Warren and her husband, Pastor Rick Warren, understand this terrible loss. She's with us to share her story and how it affected her belief in the goodness of God. Okay, first of all, thank you for traveling all the way from California to St. Louis to be with us.
Thank you for the invitation.
So we know that you have a lot to say and a lot of firsthand experience. So tell us about your son, Matthew.
Matthew was, he was 27 when he died, and we learned pretty early on that he had a mental illness. He was a third of our children, and we knew he was different. From the time he was just a toddler. He would throw the Candyland game and cry for hours, and you couldn't console him, and just this negative mood. And we just kept thinking he'll grow out of it.
Yeah.
You know, we knew he was different than his older brother and sister, but it just never occurred to us that it could be a mental illness because we didn't know children could experience mental illness. But he was diagnosed with depression at 7, and then just this sort of list, it went from there to bipolar disorder, to OCD, to major depressive, to suicidal ideation, to, I mean, they just kept stacking up these things. And he just lived with torment, really torture and torment for about 20 years. And sadly, on April 5th, 2013, he just hit that wall of mental illness for the last time, and he took his life. And it was the worst day of our lives. I have to tell you, though, in spite of the fact that he lived with a very tortured mind and very difficult life situations, he was so funny, creative, and compassionate. He had such a tender heart for other people who hurt. After he died, I've just had so many people send me notes and letters of encounters they had with him. Even as he was suffering, he would reach out for the person in the room who was having a hard time, or he was the person who would offer a kind word. So he was amazing, hilariously funny, creative, goofy, and yet so full of pain.
So tell us about the aftermath. How did you get over it? What did you go through?
Well, I'm not over it.
Yeah.
You don't get over it. I think that's probably one of the main things that I'd learned, and I'd love to pass on to your listeners, is you don't get over it, you get through it.
Right.
And on the other hand, I mean, I don't want to get over missing my son. He was my child. He grew in my body. I gave birth to him. I nursed him. I nurtured him. I cared for him for 27 years. I can't get over the fact that he died. I think anybody who's lost a child will tell you this is not something you get over. You learn to live with. Life can be good again, but let me tell you something. Grief is the hardest work I have ever done. I have never worked as hard as moving through grief as I am, as Rick and I and our family are today. It's catastrophic. When suicide occurs, there's trauma. The person died sometimes violently, sometimes obviously unnaturally. It was not, they killed themselves, so that's traumatic. So with suicide, there are these layers of trauma and anguish and guilt that don't always accompany other kinds of death. And so with suicide, we were just instantly thrust into this world of all these unanswered questions. Why? I tried to talk him off the ledge hundreds of times, and I was able to. Why couldn't I that night? Was he thinking about us, you know, at the moment that he died? Did he suffer? Will we ever know all the reasons why that day? There's just so many unanswered.
Is there something I could have done?
Is there something, yeah, should we have done this? Should we have done that? What if we hadn't done this? And it just comes with guilt that's real or not real. It comes with trauma. It comes with isolation.
Was it harder even for you as a well-known pastor's wife and pastor of a large church?
Yes, in the sense that his death, Matthew's death, was it was a scrolling headline on CNN, so everybody knew really quickly. There was no chance for any privacy or private grieving. We were just immediately out in the public eye. So that was difficult, but we've made a practice. We've been in ministry 43 years, and we've just made it a practice to live our lives as authentically as we can,
It's so
knowing that
important.
people are watching and that people are observing. And so we figured, okay, this is not the way we would have chosen to grieve, but here we are in the public eye. So how can we use our grief and our suffering to maybe show other people how you live through something this as devastating as this, how you trust God in the face of your worst nightmare coming true.
Right.
How do you rebuild hope? I wouldn't say that we didn't choose. Obviously, we didn't choose to have it be public like that, but since it was, it's like, okay, God, how do you want to use us and our family in this grieving process to still reflect that we trust you? We have a lot of questions, a lot of unanswered questions, but we trust you.
I think that's one of the most redemptive things that a person can do, is to take the pain to God, not only ask Him to heal you, but to use it to help somebody else. I think that it not only helps you, but it does end up undoing Satan's plan to destroy you, and you end up being able to help other people with it.
That is part of all of what I think he promises when he says, I will give you beauty for ashes.
Right.
Because there is healing over time, but there's also part of the beauty is knowing that you can help other people, that you can give other people courage to face their difficult times, their hard times. And every time I tell Matthew's story, I mean, I'll leave here and I'll go and I'll cry, because every time to tell his story is painful.
Sure.
But every time is also a part of the healing, to talk about the hope, to talk about how God is with us and that God can be with someone else in their suffering. And when people tell me that, I know you experience this, all the pain and sorrow in your life, when people say, oh, but Joyce, when you share and you tell me how God's worked in your life, it gives me strength.
Oh, yeah.
And so
all
it's
the time.
same for us. People say, hearing your story, hearing that you've not walked away from God, makes me feel like I can do this in my life with my pain, my suffering.
And I think even talking about this, it will help other people with other kinds of pain.
Exactly.
It's, God never promises us no pain.
That's right.
And so often when people have unanswered questions and things they don't understand, they turn away from God. But what do we turn to?
There's nothing.
There's
There's nothing really. And there's no one.
Yeah, there's no one. God's the only one that can help you.
No.
So you want to draw closer to Him.
That's right.
Not get mad at Him and push away from Him.
I like to, for me, it has been struggling in the embrace of God. The only place it's really safe enough for me to say everything I want to say, to let out all my doubts, my anger, my confusion, my disappointment that God didn't heal Matthew here. The only safe place for me to really do that is in the embrace of Jesus. And in the embrace of Jesus Christ, we can beat our fists on His chest. We can cry, we can sob, we can moan, we can weep, we can scream if we need to, but it's running to Him and being in that embrace. He can handle it.
Right.
He can handle all of my pain. He can handle all of my questions, all of my confusion. So I made a choice to run to Him.
That's good.
And not away.
We hope you enjoyed this teaching. To get more from Joyce, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a thing.